Welcome to Computing with Dr. D. I'm on YouTube and this is your YouTube channel for C# tutorials and other computing lectures and things I'll be doing over the next few months on my channel for you to learn about basic computing. We're going to start with a very basic computer program that we're going to be writing in C# in Visual Studio 2022. You can see here I have Visual Studio 2022 open, and you can either open a previous project or start a new project. You create a new project by pressing that button. In this case, we're going to be doing a console app or a command line program. And you can see console app there, you could search for it there, and then you simply press next. Once you have it there, you can give it a name or an identifier that means something. And since we're going to be doing Talking Computer, we'll write that name in here. I'll say Talking Comp V2, which is a version number, and we press next. And I tick that box to show all the background methods that Visual Studio might hide from us. Otherwise, you can see the namespace there, Talking Computer, the internal classes program, and we have a main method here. And I'm going to be calling that the main method. All I'm doing there is adding documentation or comments that I'm making to help you understand what's going on. Main method is also known as a procedure. So let's just say that there. Console write line is a form of output. So let's just give that a description. We're not going to be saying hello world since the computer is going to be talking to our users who are human. So the computer is going to say hello human, and then it will say, let me ask you a few questions so that we know what to expect from our program. It's a good idea to keep your user informed as to what's going on. And the computer can then say, okay, we could even put it on the same line. Please tell me your name. I guess it's a question, but it's now the user's or the human's turn to reply. So we don't use console write line. We need to use a kind of container or a variable to hold the information. And we're going to use a data type called string. So let's just have a description there of that variable of type string. And we need to get the response of our users. We can do all of that in one line. We first of all define our variable type, which is like this container that holds the information. And of course, the word name would work to hold that information. Inside the computer, that will occupy a kind of memory space where the name data will be held. And we can change that data inside that variable, which is named name, with different names or different strings as we use the program. It can be multiple words, or it can be a single word, as most of us would use when we're writing down our name. When we write our name, we need the program to read what is entered into the screen. So we're going to do that here using console readline, which is really an inbuilt method that will read whatever is input before you press enter, because you press enter and then it goes into that class and it will be saved into the variable name. So after that line, the computer now knows your name, and so it is able to greet you. The Visual Studio 2022 has been very helpful here. It's given us that information because it's interpreted that we're likely to be doing that. But before that, our computer robot is going to actually have some sort of sensible response. It will say, good to meet you, and then we have a comma and a space, and we use this plus symbol to concatenate or join the variable with the string that we've created here. And again, we have our double inverted commas to hold the end of the string or the end of the sentence that the computer is saying. Obviously, after the name, we would usually have a comma and then a space. So we're going to say, good to meet you, and whatever your name is, and then it will say something like, I don't know, how are you feeling today? So let's get our robot talking to us. So it's genuinely interested in our well-being. How are you feeling today? So that's written to the screen, and again, we need to respond. Again, we need to have a variable that's going to take our first response, and the variable needs a different name or different description. So we're going to actually have that here. So we're going to need a console write line. Oh, read line, sorry. Sorry about the dog. I'll just keep going. So console read line, and we're going to be reading whatever the response is, and we need our two brackets here and an inverted commas to hold that, to end that line. And let's just say answer 1 because it's the first question. And again, we need to define our variable. The name of it's there. If you look down the bottom in terms of debugging, it says that we've got an error. The name does not exist. It doesn't exist because we haven't given it that variable type, which is called string. So here we're going to have our string, and so now we have our variable defined, answer 1. It's a string type. It's reading the line, and we're going to be telling the computer how we're feeling today, or our users are. Now, once the computer finds that out, it's going to need to respond to that. In order to respond, we're going to be using an if statement. An if statement is also called selection because it will select amongst different responses. The structure of an if is like this. We have our two brackets. You can see it said answer there equals null. If we press tab, we can accept that, but I'm not having null. If answer 1 is equivalent to a good, and that's a typical response. How are you feeling today? Good. Well, what about if someone answered okay? We're going to use an or there. Now that or, I'll just type that here, or is two vertical, what's called pipes. They're found above your backslash on your keyboard. And again, when we have an alternative response, we need to define the whole logic statement. Answer 1 is equivalent to what else? Okay, let's just use okay. It's interesting how it helps us with the double inverted commas each time. And another one might be fine. I'm feeling fine. And so that's another kind of typical response you might get from people when they're asked how they're feeling. So let's just go fine. Now, we have to then have our whatever the computer is going to respond after it knows whether that has happened or not, whether the response is good or okay or fine. If it's either of those three things, the computer will say, okay, I'm going to say, that's great to hear, but I feel the same as always. Since it's a robot, it doesn't have any emotion, so we'll just pretend and we'll keep going with it. we'll go console read line, and we'll save the program at this point. It's a good idea after you've written a few lines to press the save button, save all, and our project is saved. Now we're going to go back to our console write line because the computer's responding, and we need our semicolon at the end of our line, and we need our double inverted commas we can write inside those, and the computer will say, that's great to hear. I feel the same as always. So I'll just type that in. Now, we can take the opportunity here to say the next line as well. If we want it on a different line, we can just go console write line again. Although if I have a large command window output, I can simply ask another question here. Or I can do a \n for a new line, \r, \n, and then I can continue on with my text. I'm going to say, how about I ask you a few more questions? Now, it's a kind of rhetorical question. I don't think we're going to expect a response for that, but certainly we need to provide the option of anyone entering anything else into the keyboard. Most of our users probably won't say good or okay or fine. So we're going to, we've already received what they've said. It's in the answer one, but we don't need a logical statement to say what an incorrect answer might be. Incorrect as in it's not one of the options we expected. But we do need to anticipate that they're going to enter anything else. So the else does that for us. So we're going to just assume they've answered something else. And again, we're going to be saying write line. The computer's going to write line. It's going to say something as if it's intelligent. We're going to pretend it's an intelligent system that's talking to us. So it'll say, that's interesting. And then maybe use our name. So let's type that in. And then we can use the name again. We can go have our space there, add the name. So it sounds like it's talking to us. Need a space there. Well, we should have our comma there as well. And then we'll say, okay, what about, well, because the computer doesn't really understand what's going on, as you might if you didn't hear something correctly, you could say, that's interesting, but I'm uncertain how to interpret that. And if we wanted to also make sure we did hear, the human knows that we heard what was said, we could then say, I'm uncertain how to interpret what you said when you said, and then we can actually use the entire phrase or whatever the person wrote into our program, and we can put that here. So we need our bracket, we need our semicolon, and now we can see what's going to happen with our program. So we need to test both options, whether it's correct or whether it's not the expected answer. Let's run it now. So that's the run button, that green arrow, and we have our output screen here. Hello human, let me ask you a few questions. Please tell me your name. Okay, my name is Frederico. Good to meet you, Frederico. How are you feeling today? And I could say, I could say I'm feeling garbage. That's interesting, Frederico, but I'm uncertain how to interpret what you said when you said garbage. Interesting. So let's now see what it does when we put in the expected response. Here we go again. This time I'm going to just say, okay, Fred, good to meet you, Fred. How are you feeling today? I am feeling okay. That's great to hear, but I feel the same as always. How about I ask you a few more questions? So it has this little tab and it has a new line. So our new line characters worked, R and N. You can muck around with them to see how you go. But there's your first program. I would think that now you should be able to see that here's the first question, and you should be able to add other questions to your program. I'm going to give you the task to write 4 or 5 of these questions and see how you go. There's also an else if you could use. And we could have done that instead of okay or fine, and we could have said else if the answer. Maybe they feel like garbage, I suppose. So let's say here the first question. Now let's add an else if. And so down here we can go else if, and we're going to now need our logic again, and we're going to need our curly brackets again. Now the else if will say answer 1 equals poorly, or answer 1 is equivalent to bad, or answer 1 is equivalent to, I don't know, unwell. And now, how about we get the computer to respond in a kind of compassionate, understanding way? What do you think? So we'll just copy that line. We'll pop that line down here, but that's, we're going to get the computer to say, oh dear, I am so sorry to hear that. But I feel the same as always. How about I ask you a few more questions? It's not that compassionate, is it? We need to save it all, and we need to run that and check that our else if works. Do we have any errors? No. So it should run. Let's go and press our run button. There we are. We're pressing our run button, and we're going to now, hello human, let me ask you a few questions. Tell me your name. Amy. Good to meet you, Amy. How are you feeling today? Amy's not feeling, Amy's feeling unwell. Oh dear, I'm sorry to hear that, but I feel the same as always. How about I ask you a few more questions? So we can see here that we've got our talking computer started. See if you can add a few more questions. See if you can finish this program and come to us in part 2, and I'll show you how to loop the whole thing to keep it open, and I'll add a couple more questions when we come back. Thanks for watching your first tutorial in Computing with Dr. D. I hope to see you again soon.